Okay, so this begins a little mini series of videos I'm going to do about Dodge pickups from the 70s and what the differences are. I decided to do this video simply because suddenly I had a whole variety of them on the yard within the last month. And some are still here: 72, 73, 74, 76, 77, 78, and an 80. That covers quite a bit of the variety. In addition to the variety that I currently have, I've got all kinds of stuff, parts over the years I've gathered up. Some I still have, some I've sold. So I think I've developed a fairly good knowledge base, and I want to pass that on. This is going to be the same intro for all the videos. So if you're watching this and it's not the first one, then go back and check out my channel or the playlist that I hopefully will set up, and then you can watch all of them. I'm going to try to keep them in that 10 to 15 minute range, so I really don't know how many I'm going to have. I might have 2, I might have 15. Well, I won't have 15. I might have like 4, something like that. It kind of depends. So, but I'm going to do it in a logical manner as best I can. So the logical progression and the way these videos are going to work, the way I'm going to put them up, is how you would encounter a vehicle, whether it's online or whether you see one sitting on the side of the road for sale. Exterior first, what are the differences? Then you would probably get inside, check out the cab, and then that's going to be the next thing, the interior. Then underneath the hood, the various differences under the hood. And then the last part would be mechanical and miscellaneous oddball things. Not so much mechanical, because most of the mechanical changes are going to be purely option driven, and I'm not going to get deep into options and packages and stuff like that. I'll mention some of the things, but I'm not going to get into this year had this option, this one had this, because that changed way too much. And with pickups, it was, and actually anything in the 70s really, the whole deal was if you could pay for it, the factory would make it for you. And I have seen some really weird stuff that was not, quote, available, but yet somehow was available. So I'm not, like I say, I'm just not going to get into that part of it. So here's something that I think really needs to be mentioned the way I'm doing this video. You're not going to see pristine vehicles. You're not going to see the show trucks. I'm dealing with just old, sometimes quite beat up trucks, original stuff that I don't believe has been changed or modified. In some cases, maybe never even worked on a day in its life in the last 40, almost 50 years on some of these things. The reason for that is simple. I want to know the way it was when it left the factory, and that's what I'm trying to show to you, is the way it left. Now, a nice show truck, it could be 100% perfect as factory, but I don't know that because so many of these parts are so similar, you won't notice. And I'll show you, especially when I start talking about the pickup boxes. There are a lot of differences in the boxes over the years, way more than I ever realized until, again, like I say, I started looking at them and realizing that, oh, this is different, that's different, and then really started looking at all the differences that there are. So you can see a bunch of beat up rusty things. You can see stuff like this: busted windshield, rust on it, whatever, trashy or rat infested interiors. But so long as the pieces are original, that's what I'm going for. That's what you're going to see. So please keep that in mind. Don't diss the trucks. They are what they are. All right, welcome to part 2 of my video series on the Dodge pickups, the 72 to 80 differences and stuff. This one, I think, is going to be the meat of a lot of things people are going to find interesting. It's all sheet metal. We're talking everything from the front bumper filler panel, the fenders, the hood, the doors, the box, and the tailgate. I think unless you know how much differences there are in the box, I think a lot of people are going to be very surprised at how many differences there are in the box. That thing never stayed the same, hardly ever, it seems like. So I hope you enjoy these. One thing you'll maybe notice about the list of sheet metal, I did not mention the radiator support or the cab. That stuff will be covered in the following, hopefully the next video, part 3, along with a few other things. So, I think that's about it. So, alright, enjoy! Bumper filler panel for 72, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all the same. And you'll notice that the opening here is almost identical with the opening in the grill itself, not the opening in the radiator support. It's a little bit offset, but not a whole lot. A little styling detail. They continue that. 77, 78, 80 is all, 79, 80 is also the same way. That opening kind of lines up with the grill itself. 1979, 1980 bumper filler panel, front bumper filler panel is a little different because the grill attaches differently. So from the outside they're the same, but what you can't see is what's different. So you've got a little bump out here, a screw hole, bump out here, screw hole, and then a couple of these other ones. That's because that's where the grill attaches there instead of a couple other places on the inside. But the marker lights are the same. It's just, you know, what you can't see is the only real difference in the bumper filler panel for 79 and 80. Okay, let's talk about hoods quick. There's 2 different styles, but 3 different hoods. And 72, 73 have this different, there we go, the different bump stop. This is flat up here. 74 is kind of bumped out, just like the corners are, like that. And then that rubber bumper is in the hood, and then there's a the landing pad, I guess, landing spot is part of the cowl panel. But from the exterior, they're exactly the same. They're interchangeable so long as you make provisions for that. Either add it or subtract it or get rid of it, whatever, however it works. And I'll show you. Here I have a 76, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. There's that rubber bumper and that little landing pad. Otherwise, they are exactly the same. And they're, like I say, they're totally interchangeable with that one provision taken care of. And then we have the 7980 hood, which, again, even though the inside is the same, the outside is different. And then the other thing that's different is this, the latch area, because this latch has now changed. It now kind of bolts up on top versus kind of down inside. I mentioned that, or will mention it depending on what order you watch. The radiator support area, I talked about that. So here you have it kind of down inside there. Your up-down adjustment is here, and your sideways is here a little bit, not a whole lot of it. Oops. And your sideways is up here, not a whole lot of it really. Most of your sideways adjustment is going to be in your entire radiator support, moving it back and forth. And now here our adjustment up down is in this piece, and our sideways is down here, kind of just basically the exact opposite of the other one. You can put the newer hood on the older truck, but you have to mess around changing a bunch of this. You can put the older or the newer hood on the older truck because some people don't like the bird bath hood. There's a lot of messing around to make this hit your latch right, because the other thing you'll notice is the center line of everything is changed just a little bit. And I know this because I did this on my 84, because they actually changed in the 80s at 1.2. They changed the way the latch was set up. And then so the way this sits, you know, left and right changed a little bit, and the way that sits, so it's doable, but it turned a half-hour process into a 3-hour ordeal just to get it in there and get it right and figure out what I had to do and not have to do without taking the hood back off again. So I think that's about all I can speak about hoods.
Work. Yeah, I guess you can see this a little better. So 74 Power Wagon hood. I noticed something taking it off that I hadn't noticed before. There's no screw hole in the middle. I don't know when they started putting the screw hole in. I know 77s and newer have them. I'm not sure if they changed it 5, 6, or 7 was the first year for the screw hole, and prior to that they were just glued on. I looked in the backside, there's no studs or anything sticking through, so it's just a glue-on thing. My guess would be 75 because a whole bunch of other little things changed in 75, but I don't know. So I guess there's early and late, and when the break year is, we'll have to figure that out some other day. Okay, let's talk about some fenders. Hopefully the snow doesn't blind you that bad. So there's actually a few differences in fenders. 72, there were no provisions back in this area for the electronic ignition. I'll talk about that later on in the underhood section of these videos. But the left fender, that was different. Although that's a pretty minor, that's just drilling 2 holes. And then starting in 79, this guy showed up because that's where the diagnostic port would be mounted for the all the diagnostics. So they could hook up their little computer and they could figure out why it wasn't running right or whatever. So that's about the only difference in the driver's side fender that I know of, other than occasionally, you know, some of the mounting holes changed, but those are pretty minor and those came and went a little to some degree. So, and then the passenger side fender, very similar, not much of a change until 79. You can see here the antenna mount, and again, this one's really chewed up in there, so I don't know what I'm going to do about that. I might have to find a different one. But they actually have this a little bit raised, so it's flat and level. So by 79, just about everything had a radio in, with a few exceptions, of course, but it was common enough to the point where it was time to like make that part of the body. So, and I will show you what one looks like without. Okay, in 1978, this truck had a factory radio, so therefore it had an antenna. Notice it's not beveled out, raised, or anything like that. They just punched a hole in there, and all of them from the factory, with factory radios anyway, are all right in that same location. Now, if it had no radio from the factory but a dealer installed, then it was kind of anybody's guess where on the top of this fender they would actually drill that hole out. They were supposed to come with a template, so they were all in the same place, but I've seen them as far as back here, almost to the point where they're in the way of the cowl, to, you know, quite a bit far forward, which is ridiculous, like way up here. I've even seen one that had it on the driver's fender. Obviously that was, I don't know why, but for some reason they put it up on that side. But a factory one would be here, and I'm sure if it was a factory, if they knew it was going to be a radio truck from the factory, they would add that to their stamp and die and punch a hole in there like everything else. One last tidbit on fenders. So there's a brace that'll go in about like yay on some fenders. These are usually found in 4-wheel drives, but not always. Sometimes I've seen just one side will have it, the other side won't. Sometimes neither side will have it, and then sometimes, once in a blue moon, a 2-wheel drive will have this in. So I don't know the purpose for them 100%, other than obviously they're a brace, they're helped to stiffen the fender. But why some had it and some don't, I don't know. All right, doors. There's basically 2 different kinds, and they're super easy. So midway through 75, they added a little indentation around the door handle. So the older ones, the first half of the 70s, had no indentation. Those doors were discontinued at some point, so if you ended up getting a replacement door later on, you had to get one with an indentation in that looks like that. And that's the only difference from the outside of the door. That's all that's different outside of the door. And like I say, midway 75, and I've talked to some people that have had one of each style on the vehicle from the factory. As they were going down the assembly line, whatever they had is what they got put on. So it's possible 75s could have either or either and. Inside, show you a couple of the differences. So one of the big differences is the way the vent window closes. Up here it's a latch, opens like that. Whoops, open if I can hold the camera straight. And then later on, starting in 78, they changed to this style, which is the style that lasted through the 80s. The divider bar here was chrome or painted, and then again the outside was chrome or painted. You could have both. And starting in 78 sometime, I'll show you this in a little bit, there was a hole added here, and hang on, I'll go find one of those. Well, now I can't find 78 that's got one in right now, but I've had them before. So this is what the hole looks like. Just a little body plug fits in there, and I'm guessing that was in there so they could spot weld something together a little better, because that's really all that's back there. And I'm gonna guess starting in 79, when I believe that was the first year for power door locks, or maybe it was 80. Right in that range, you started other options. So I'm gonna assume there's a few other holes like for that might be in stuff. Also, there's two different style window regulators. They're interchangeable so long as you know which holes to add or subtract. The older ones are bolted in, then they switched over to a riveted in version. Again, they work the same. It's just a matter of having the right holes for them. And I think in 80 they were again different, which then is the same as the 80s pickups. But again, everything 80 is its own animal, it seems like. Here we have a 1973 Dodge pickup box, and as you can see, there are no gas fillers on the outside, minus that one weird one in the front. Just ignore that. That's, I'm thinking, a dealer installed one, but there'll be more about that in the fuel section in a different video. So nothing on the outside for a fuel tank, because all the fuel tanks were cap mounted. We go inside and we see no provision for the gas filler coming through. Again, that changed in 74 when they started putting them from the factory underneath the tank as the mains, where the gas filler comes through. This is a 1974, and you'll see this is kind of tack welded on. You'll see this is kind of tack welded on, this whole little mini doghouse, I guess we'll call it. And they were like that up through 77. However, they did change. You'll see that this one slopes out, or in I should say, quite a bit as compared to, I'll go show you some 77s over here in a little bit. So this is for sure 74. Oh, and then the other thing they had in 74 was this. They knew eventually they were probably going to put in a second tank in the back. Oddly enough, they didn't really do that until I think 79. Maybe there was a few 78s. I've yet to see one, a 78 with a rear tank. So, but this was in all of them, whether they put it in there or not. Okay, so this isn't exactly easy to see, just where I have this box stacked. This is 1975, and you'll see that the gas filler bump in has got the longer slope to it. It protrudes into the box a little more. And then back here, just like that 74, nothing there. So 74 and 5 boxes are pretty much the same. 76 changes, I'll show you that, and then and beyond. Here we have a box, 1976. You'll see that this is, still spot welded in. They were one piece, or molded in, I should say, starting in 77. And unlike the earlier ones, this does not kick out near as far. It's takes up a little less space inside the box. So that's the big difference, or one of the identifiable marks with the 1976 box. Exterior wise, they are exactly the same. Okay, so here's a 1977. This is the back. They're exactly the same front and rear. You can see they're still kind of pieces spot welded on, but it doesn't come out into the box near as far as the previous ones did.
And all 77s had this in the back also, even though I have yet to see one with a rear tank. Now, okay, so here we have 1978, and I've got a few 78s on the yard, like 5 or 6 of them, and they're all the same also. And now this piece is just stamped in. It is no longer separate, like a spot welded on like the other ones, and they have about the same. They come into the box the same amount. So this detail in the floor pan is all the same. So this box, it's a short box. I was told it came off of a 79 or an 80. Well, that would make sense because as far as I know, 79 is the first year they started, you know, recessing the rear tank in nice like that. Prior to that, if there was a rear tank, it was just, they just cut a hole about in that spot, and then just the filler neck kind of stuck out a little bit. But that's, again, and the inside of this one looks just like the other 78, 79s that I've showed.
Okay, tailgates. We have 2 basic styles with the embossed in it, which are very, very cool. Very, very hard to find nowadays. 7234, and then in 75 they went to just the flat ones without that embossing in there. You could, depending on the model, I think, as I have a 73 here that does not have the embossing in. So I should say, correction, 74 I don't know for certain. I've seen 74s with and without, so maybe at that point it was already optional or they were phasing them out. That's a typical tailgate, everybody knows.
Tailgates again. Now this bottom box is a 77, and your Dodge decal is on the right side. That 78 had it on the left side. Then we've got 2 of them up in here. Let me get in here. See, you've got, this is another trim option. I don't know what year this tailgate came off of. I don't remember anymore. But it's got this applique in there, decal applique, and the big fat wide trim. That one on the bottom doesn't have the decal on the inside anymore because the whole truck box has been painted with house paint. So, but that kind of gives you the idea. Basically, of the 2 types of trim available.
One last thing to mention about boxes is the optional toolbox on the side. There's 2 basic styles to these, and it's all in the door. So this one it's got a recessed opening, so it sits nice and flush. The other style, where the door kind of sits on top, they basically just cut a hole in the box side and put it all together, so the door sits a little bit proud of the rest of the box. I believe that's the way they were the first couple of years, and then they went to this design, which of course is a lot nicer fit and finish. However, if it was a dealer installed one, obviously it would have to be the kind that has the door sitting on the outside of the box, you know, sitting a little bit tall of it. I don't know for certain if those doors are interchangeable. I think the actual box underneath is. I haven't had enough of these to know. I have a picture here of the other style where the box, where the door sits a little bit on top of the box. I don't know a ton about these things other than, you know, those couple facts, and maybe that's all there is to know too.